Weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a call from my daughter. She said this year's feast would have the best lobster and the most expensive roasted turkey. She wanted the house to feel festive. I thought she was inviting me to join the celebration until she said, "Just send the money. You don't have to come. We don't have enough space." So I laughed because this time, not only would I be on the outside looking in, so would my money. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's traveled. When the maple leaves outside my house start to fall, I know Thanksgiving is near. That old tree outside my kitchen window, John planted it himself when he was still alive. Every November, it transforms into a blaze of warm color, like a silent reminder that the holidays are coming. And just as faithfully, it reminds me that I'll be spending them alone again. John's been gone for 10 years. He left me this house just outside of Philadelphia, and I've never moved. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to leave the memories behind. I still imagine him sitting at this kitchen table with coffee in one hand and the newspaper in the other. With my eyes closed, I see it all. That chair has been empty for a decade, like a corner of my heart that I've learned to live around. The ache has faded with time. For others, the holidays mean getting together. For me, they've become a time of dazzling loneliness. I've gotten used to roasting a turkey for one, mixing cranberry sauce for another, distracting myself in front of the parade broadcast on television with no one to share it with. My daughter, Emily, has never invited me to her house. She's always too busy, the kids are too noisy, the house is too small. Her words are always polished, never personal. I've offered to bring wine, dessert, even to help with the preparation, but each time she ignores me saying, "We have enough help this year." So I didn't expect anything different. This time I kept my hopes in check. Tuesday morning arrived. I was still loading 2 heavy bags of canned corn into the back seat when my phone rang. "Hello, Mom?" Her voice was softer than usual, almost cheerful. "How are you? It's getting colder. Remember to bundle up well." I paused, set the bags on the ground, and propped the phone between my shoulder and cheek. Her tone caught me off guard. "I'm fine. Just finished up at the store. How's everything going? How's Liam doing at school?" I tried to sound calm, but I felt a pang in my chest. Emily never called before the holidays unless she needed something. "He's fine. He had a cold last month and coughed for weeks, but we took him to the doctor. Child health care is so expensive now." She paused and took a deep breath. I could hear laughter and music in the background, a kind of full and noisy gathering. "Well, what's going on?" I said with a half smile, trying to calm the unease that was flooding me. "You didn't just call to check on me." She let out a giggle, reclaiming her familiar tone. "You know me too well, Mom. The truth is, this Thanksgiving, we're planning something very special. I want it to be unforgettable for Liam." "Sounds good," I replied cautiously. "Yeah, I ordered one of those free-range turkeys, reserved a seafood platter, and I'm making a homemade pumpkin pie. His favorite." Her voice rose as if she were going through a shopping list. I leaned against the car and listened. For an instant, I could almost feel the energy of a bustling family kitchen, something I hadn't been part of in years. And then her tone became a little more paused. "I was wondering if you could help me cover the cost this time. I know you got your pension last month and Dad left the insurance payment, right?" I gripped the phone tighter. My knuckles turned white. "We're on a bit of a tight budget. More people are coming this year, and everything is expensive." I checked. "It should be around $2,500 for a Thanksgiving dinner," I thought, and took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice serene. "I thought you were calling to invite me." There was a pause on the line. Then she laughed softly. "Oh, Mom, we really don't have space. Jim's parents are coming, and his sister is bringing her whole family. 5. You know how small our place is. But don't worry, we'll FaceTime you during dinner. It'll be like you're there. You don't have to travel, it's too much. Just send the money, okay?" Her voice faded into the noise of a party behind her, but in my ears everything had become strangely silent, as if it were stuffed with cotton. "You mean I send the money, but I don't come?" I repeated slowly, making sure I had heard her right. "Exactly, it's easier for you. Besides, you don't like noisy, crowded places, do you?" My lips parted, but no words came out. She kept talking, but I didn't notice anything. I was only left with her last sentence before she ended the call. "Thank you so much, Mom. We'll definitely be thinking of you this Thanksgiving." I ended the call and sat there in the driver's seat with my hands still around the steering wheel, but my whole body felt as if it had collapsed inward. I looked in the rearview mirror, a woman with gray and thinning hair, deep wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, and an expression I didn't recognize. Empty was looking back at me. She wasn't wrong. I don't like crowds, but only because no crowd has made space for me. And in that moment, I knew I wouldn't repeat that pattern again. I wouldn't confuse coldness with normalcy, nor would I expect an invitation that would never arrive. I wouldn't finance their holiday show with the crumbs of my own loneliness. They wanted my money, but not my presence. This time they wouldn't get anything, because this year I'm keeping something for myself. I didn't sleep a wink that night. After that call, I sat in my old kitchen chair and stared at the empty seat across from me. Outside the window, the early winter rain tapped softly against the glass, gentle as a lullaby, but it did nothing to soothe me. On the table was a crumpled sticky note with my Thanksgiving shopping list from the last week: pureed corn, pumpkin pie, apple cider, spices for the roasted turkey. The handwriting was a little crooked but neat, clearly made with guests in mind. But now I realized that I had even lied to myself about why I wrote it. A part of me imagined, hoped that maybe this year Emily would be different, that even if we weren't going to sit together by the fireplace, maybe she would come to pick me up. Maybe she would take me to get takeout and call it Thanksgiving dinner. I even had it planned out. If she asked, I would let everything go and walk through her door with a smile, as I'd done for the last 10 years, pretending that nothing had happened. But she didn't. She just called to ask for money and said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I thought I had become numb to her coldness, but that phrase, "just send the money, you don't have to come," was like a lightning bolt. It destroyed all the excuses I had made for her. She didn't forget to invite me. To begin with, she never wanted me to be there. I wasn't part of her Thanksgiving. I was just another item on her budget. I got up and went into the study. That little room had always been my sanctuary. On the shelves were John's old photo albums, his typewriter, and that heavy wooden box where we kept all our financial documents. I knelt down and pulled a moldy old ledger from the bottom shelf. The cover was faded and the corners were curled. It was John's meticulous record of our family budget. He used to say, "You don't know how a house survives until you write down the numbers." I turned to the last pages. There were notes about his pension, my old nurse's salary, our first medical expenses. His handwriting was neat, patient, as if he were trying to understand everything. Between the pages was a carefully folded letter with the paper yellowed by time. It was from John, a postscript to his will, written 6 months before his death. "Grace, if you're reading this, it probably means I didn't make it to the end with you. I know you'll always put Emily first, but I hope that just for once you consider putting yourself in that situation too. This home wasn't built just for kids. It was built for us, and I left it to you so you could live in peace, not so that anyone else could decide how you should live." My fingers were trembling. I folded the letter and laid it on my lap, leaning back in the chair with my eyes closed. I had spent so many years silencing myself. The moment Emily called asking for money, I didn't even question it. I immediately started calculating how I could get it together. Not once did I stop to ask myself, do I really want to give it? I remembered all the reasons she had once given me for asking. In 2016, she said they needed a bigger house for Liam. I gave her my savings for the down payment. In 2018, private school tuition was too high. I also covered it. In 2020, Jim's job was unstable and they had lost their insurance. I paid his father-in-law's hospital bond. Reimbursement was not mentioned once. Even last year, when Lee was in high school, she claimed she had postpartum depression and needed therapy. I helped her again. She never asked, "Can you pay for this, Mom?" She told me, "It's your duty to support me." And I never said no, not once. As I flipped through the ledger, a memory came to mind. Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I brought a homemade pumpkin pie to her house and knocked on the door. Jim opened it and seemed surprised. "Oh, Emily, didn't she tell you we're having dinner at my sister's house tonight?" I smiled and said, that's okay." I left the pie at the door and went back out into the cold. That pie wasn't the only thing I left behind. I left behind another part of me, another contribution to a family that never saw me as a part of it. Back then, I told myself that this was what mothers did, that it was normal, but now I know better. It wasn't destiny, it was conditioning. I had taught them that they could erase me and still expect everything from me. Not this year. I will not be the last word on anyone's holiday. I will not fund another celebration to which I'm not even welcome. This year, I will make soup for myself and roast a turkey just big enough for one person, and I will eat every bite with joy and peace. I took my phone and opened the Notes app. Then I wrote a new plan for Thanksgiving. Go to the market and pick up the freshest organic vegetables. Buy that bottle of apple cider that I always said was too expensive. Roast a turkey just the right size, no more, no less. Dust off the old record player in the living room. Put on John's favorite jazz. Most importantly, don't save seats for anyone else, just one for myself. I let out a deep sigh. I felt like it was the first promise I had made to myself in years. I got up and made a cup of black tea. I drank it slowly, as if I were rehearsing for the Thanksgiving I would give myself, not an inherited one or a tolerated one, but one that I created for myself. The morning sun poured into the kitchen, casting golden streaks on the worn wooden floor. I sat at the dining room table with my hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee. Next to it was the old ledger I had left open the night before with the yellowed cover slightly curved at the corners. I turned to the last page. Only a handful of income and expense notes that I had jotted down over the last few years. The truth was, I wasn't having financial problems. The house was paid off and my pension came in regularly every month. But after a lifetime of saving, frugality had become a reflex. I could afford things, but I never allowed myself to believe that I deserved them. Emily was not entirely wrong. I'd almost never spent money on myself. Maybe it was time to stop associating love with giving everything away. I got up and walked down the hall to the closet. From the top shelf, I took down a wooden file box. It weighed more than I remembered. Inside were decades of documents, property titles, insurance papers, and handwritten notes that John had left. John was one of those people who believed that everything should be in writing. Even the shopping list came with a postscript. One of them still said in his messy handwriting, "Don't forget to buy something just for you." I smiled and then took the deed, the original from when we bought this house. Back then, the street was still quiet. There were no remodeled houses or new shiny trucks in every driveway. We were one of the first couples to move in. We didn't have much, but we had plans, dreams. And now, this little neighborhood had become one of the most coveted corners of the city. Coffee shops on every corner, new families running with strollers, dogs wagging their tails. I hesitated for a moment, but then I picked up the phone and called my neighbor, Linda. She was a retired real estate agent who had moved into one of the newly remodeled houses 2 years ago. "Hey, Linda, would you mind giving me a rough estimate of the value of my house?" I tried to keep a light tone, just curious, nothing more. She chuckled and said, "Of course, in fact, I had some new market data on hand, and I could stop by later that afternoon." 3 hours later, she showed up with a thick folder in her hand. "Do you know how hot this neighborhood is right now?" she said as soon as she walked in. At my kitchen table, she spread out several pages, charts, maps, printouts. She marked some numbers with the pen. "This street is about to benefit from the next phase of city expansion. Young families are rushing in. Do you know how long the house behind yours was on the market last year?" I shook my head. 5 days. It sold for 12% over the asking price. A conservative estimate for yours, between $750,000 and $800,000. If you make some cosmetic fixes, paint, fixtures, maybe the basement, you could raise the price. I sat in stunned silence. I had always thought my house was old and simple. The wiring needed improvements. The basement was a little damp and the plumbing was a little delicate. Emily had said the same thing many times. In fact, she often suggested that I let her and Jim sell it on my behalf and then move to a senior residence closer to their house. Less trouble, she would say. Better quality of life. At the time, I took it as a concern, but now, hearing Linda talk so naturally about the value of this house, I began to wonder if that concern had a price. Linda stacked the charts neatly and smiled. "You don't have to decide anything now. I just wanted you to know, don't underestimate what you have, especially this house." I nodded silently, walked her to the door, and then returned to the silence of my kitchen. I sat down again, opened an old photo album, and found a photo of the day we moved in. John was standing in the front yard with his shirt soaked in sweat, while I held a shiny new mailbox, smiling in my oversized t-shirt. He laughed that day and said, "This will be our Thanksgiving home for years to come." At the time, I thought he was being too sentimental. The future seemed so far away, so uncertain, but now, sitting here alone in that same kitchen, surrounded by all the things we once built together, I realized something. This house is not just a place to live. It is the most tangible, silent, and unwavering asset I have ever had. It has never wavered. It has never moved, no matter how many times I have been fired, forgotten, or left behind. All these years, I thought I didn't have much to show for it, but the truth is, I've had more power than I ever imagined. I'm still not sure what I'll do with that power, but I do know one thing: I will no longer hand it over so easily. Not out of greed, but because, for once, I finally understand. It's time to start making decisions for me. Emily called again just as I was finishing mowing the front lawn. Her voice burst through the phone with that fast, familiar rhythm. "Hi, Mom. How have you been these last few days? Are you staying hydrated? It's getting chilly. I've already taken out the heated blanket." She sounded too cheerful, as if she were reading from a script. I felt a pang, but my voice remained firm. "I'm fine, just mowed the lawn this morning. How are they doing?" She let out a light, almost artificial laugh. "Remember I told you about the lobster and turkey dinner idea, right? In the end, I made a detailed list, and it turns out I went over budget." I let out a silent, without revealing anything. "Lim wants pudding pie." She continued with nonchalance. "A friend ate it at home, and now he says that's what holidays are supposed to taste like." She giggled and then adopted a tone that tried to sound too casual. "Jim has been looking at budgets from Catherine for restaurants. They are exorbitant, so we thought, why not do it all ourselves at home? But this time of year, all the good ingredients require a deposit to reserve them." She paused, and her voice became a little slower. "So, remember you said you would help me cover it. Are you okay with transferring the money now? I'd like to place the orders today." With the phone in my hand, I went into the living room, opened the drawer, took out the checkbook, and put it back calmly. After a few seconds, I said, "I remember you mentioned it. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'll try to sort it out when I get back." She was silent, visibly surprised at how quickly I obeyed. "Oh, that's wonderful, Mom. Really, thank you so much," I smiled softly, as if none of this bothered me. "You don't have to thank me. If you have a chance, maybe Lean can video call me sometime. I miss him." She offered a vague MHM, then added that she was overwhelmed and that we would talk later. After ending the call, I stayed in the kitchen and looked into the void for a long moment. Emily hadn't noticed the change in my voice, how I no longer hesitated, how I didn't ask her if maybe she should reduce the menu a little. She didn't even believe I could say no. After all these years, she was used to hearing me say yes, but this time it was only a yes on the surface. I put down the phone, opened the laptop, and logged into my bank account. I activated two-step verification for all large transfers and changed the emergency contact. I deleted her number and replaced it with a backup cell phone I had kept for years. Then I tore the old check in half, threw it in the garbage disposal, and pressed the button. The whir of the blades shredding the paper seemed like a silent ritual to me. Then I called Linda. "Hello, it's me. Remember our chat about the house?" "Of course," she said cheerfully. "Ready to move forward?" "Yes, I'd like to list it soon." There was a brief pause before she replied. "I'll bring the paperwork tonight. There's no rush to list it. We'll prepare it properly. I'll help coordinate the staging and photos." "I trust you," I said simply. After hanging up, I called a moving company and scheduled a pickup for Thanksgiving week. Just a few boxes of carefully labeled personal items. I didn't tell them where I was going. I just said California, a friend's beach cabin. I would give them the full address later. I wasn't going to run away. I needed space to make a clear decision. Silence, not flight. I took John's old wool coat from the closet, and those black leather boots, the ones I only wore on holidays, were his last Thanksgiving gift. Emily barely looked at them, then dismissed them with a shrug. A little old-fashioned, but I kept them anyway. I sat on the edge of the bed looking at the maple tree. So many memories. It wasn't a tantrum or a sudden impulse. It was clarity, one that only comes with age. Not every act of generosity deserves to last forever. Not every silence deserves to be kept. For 10 years, I gave them all the holidays. This one I'm keeping for myself. I don't plan on telling anyone where I'm going. Emily will wait for the transfer. She will wait until the last minute before realizing that what she wanted so much and that will not fall into her hands this time. And I'll be in a beach house on the Pacific coast drinking hot mulled wine, watching the sun set into the ocean. I'll roast a turkey just big enough for one person. I'll listen to the wind whistling through the pines instead of the clinking of dishes on someone else's table. My Thanksgiving celebration will not take place in their crowded dining room. It will live on my own map. And this is just the beginning. 4 days before Thanksgiving, that morning I had messaged Linda to confirm that we could list the house for sale this week. She replied that the photography team was already scheduled and that the paperwork would be delivered to Bill the next day. I nodded to myself and stood by the window, watching the sycamore tree in the garden slowly lose its leaves. I had stayed up late the night before, sorting and packing old, treasured objects one by one. Not because I was in a hurry to leave, but because for the first time in years I felt at ease. I was doing something right, not for anyone else, but for me. I was about to seal a box of old books when the doorbell rang. I frowned. Sunday at noon was not the day neighbors usually stopped by. Linda didn't show up unannounced, and I wasn't expecting any deliveries. I put down the books and went to open the door, and there she was, Emily, standing on my porch with a can of cookies in her hand. Beside her, Lim, bundled up in a red and blue hoodie, had cheeks flushed from the cold, but was smiling radiantly. "Surprise," she said in a tone too cheerful to be casual. We were in the neighborhood and decided to stop by. "Hi, Grandma." Liam greeted me with enthusiasm. I froze for a second before instinctively stepping aside. "Of course, come in, it's cold outside." The warm scent of toast still lingered in the kitchen after breakfast, but the air became tense as soon as they entered. I served her hot chocolate while Emily put the can of cookies on the table and dusted non-existent dust from her coat. "This week has been crazy," she sighed, blowing on her cup. "Jim's work added another project, and I've barely had a minute to breathe, and Lee's homework is endless. I've been tutoring him all night. We needed a break." I nodded but remained silent. Her gaze strayed to the half-packed boxes by the sofa. "Are you taking things out?" "Yes," I said dryly. "Some books are too old to keep. I thought I'd donate them so someone else can use them." She let out a giggle. "You say it as if you were moving." I didn't say anything, slowly stirring the syrup in my cup. Liam sat on the rug with the puzzle I kept for him, content and calm. Emily looked at him and then leaned in with the softest voice. "Mom, I actually came to talk about something." Her tone was kinder than on the phone, almost persuasive. "You know, I still haven't gotten the Thanksgiving money. Jim hasn't paid much and Lean's tuition for next semester. Well, it's not covered yet. The truth is, I've been very tight lately." I looked at her without offering any response. "I'm not pressuring you," she added quickly. "It's just that you're getting older and living here alone must not be easy. You have to take care of the lawn, the maintenance, the plumbing, the taxes. It's a lot to manage." I put down the spoon and finally spoke. "Just say what you came to say." She blinked, then she took a deep breath and her expression became serious. "I think we can help you, Mom. We're looking for a bigger house, but we're short on money for the down payment. If this house were to go on the market now, you know the market is hot. You could get an excellent price." I stared at her. "So you're suggesting that I sell the house?" She smiled sweetly, as if trying not to look too anxious. No, I just mean you could transfer it to us. We'll take care of the sale, and in the meantime, we could move you to a nice senior apartment nearby. You would be comfortable, and we would be close enough to see you." She said it all so smoothly, as if she were offering a gift, but I perceived the calculation in every word. I clasped my hands in my lap and breathed deeply. "Emily, what you're really saying is, do you want me to leave so you can move in with you?" Her smile faded. "No, not immediately, of course, but this place is too much for you. We just want to help you make a plan." I looked her in the eyes and suddenly everything was clear. She had known for a long time. She knew the value of the house. She had probably already done the calculations. She was just waiting for the perfect excuse. "So you know this house has appreciated in value?" My voice sounded calm, but every word impacted me. She hesitated for a moment, but then recovered. "I mean, someone told me, and I checked it out quickly. Nothing serious," she said, giggling. That was all. That was the moment I knew for sure. She wasn't worried that I would feel overwhelmed. She was worried that the asset was still in my name, that it was still out of her reach, that she still couldn't distribute it. I got up and walked to the closet, taking out a small box that I had prepared that morning. Inside were cranberry cookies that I baked myself, meant for Liam as a Thanksgiving gift. Liam, I called, I said, Grandma has something for you. He lit up and ran to the box, hugging it tightly. Thanks, Grandma. I patted him on the head gently. Remember, holidays are for being with the people you love, not for exchanging gifts. Okay. He nodded without fully understanding, but smiling anyway. Emily stood to the side, uncomfortable. I didn't look at her when I spoke again. I'm not planning to move anytime soon, and I'm not going to transfer the house, but thanks for your concern. I already have my life organized. She opened her mouth as if she wanted to argue, but I didn't give her the opportunity. You should go. There will be a lot of traffic later. She got the message. I was walking her to the door. After dinner, I sat in the quiet living room, going over every word she'd said. The streetlights cast their light on the floor. I looked at the sealed boxes around me, and for the first time, I felt truly calm. She had said it all as if it were inevitable, as if she had everything already planned. But she forgot one thing. I am no longer the same mom she counted on for silent obedience. I picked up my phone and wrote a brief message to Linda. Go ahead as planned. Today I confirmed it. I'm making the right decision. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. For the first time in 10 years, it wasn't loneliness that woke me up, but purpose. I turned on the lights, made some coffee, and carried the suitcase I had prepared days before to the door. Then I walked through the house one last time, checking the windows, the faucets, and the thermostat. The place was clean and quiet. The kitchen windows gleamed. On the dining room table was a small note I had written. I'm gone for a few days. Do not disturb. No signature because I didn't owe anyone an explanation. At 6:40, I was at Pittsburgh International Airport watching the sunrise filter through the runway. The terminal was not crowded. People hurried past with scarves and suitcases, heads down and eyes still half asleep. I sat by the window. I had a cup of hot tea in my hands. My phone remained silent in my coat pocket. I hadn't told Emily where I was going, and of course I hadn't sent the money. Last night she sent me a voicemail. She not only asked why the transfer hadn't arrived, but also said that her holiday budget had been extended. She hoped that if I could contribute a little more. I glanced at the message. I didn't play it, nor did I delete it because this time I was no longer capable. When the plane landed in California, it was around noon. As I left the cabin, a warm coastal breeze hit me, slightly salty and full of light. The sunlight filtered through the glass roof of the terminal like a golden wave so bright that it made me squint. The taxi took me through most of the small, quiet town. Then it stopped in front of a modest cottage by the sea. Maureen, the owner of the house, was waiting at the door. Linda had told me she was a friend, a widow in her 70s, with short gray hair and a sweet face that seemed to have been smiling her whole life. You must be Grace, she said warmly. I heard you brought homemade cookies. I nodded and gave her the small can. Cranberry, not too sweet. Well, don't get too comfortable, honey, she said, motioning for me to come in. You're coming with me to the town Thanksgiving meal. These cookies are your ticket in. We headed to the community center, where there were rows of long tables on the front lawn. The tablecloths were sewn by hand by volunteers. Huge iron pots held slow-roasted turkeys. The air smelled of butter, cinnamon, and roasted apples. It was full of people, but there wasn't a lot of noise. There were widows, grandparents with young children, people my age, whose eyes reflected a kind of shared silence. No one asked where my children were. No one pitied me for arriving alone. We passed plates, told stories, shared laughs. A retired teacher even brought a guitar and sang old folk songs in a voice like sunlight through the pines. After eating, someone invited me for a walk. I declined the invitation and instead looked for a bench outside the center where the sun was still shining. I took out my phone. 5 missed calls, 3 from Emily and 2 from Jim, and a bank alert. You have successfully removed an authorized beneficiary, Emily R. I stared at the message, scrolling through the screen with my thumb, but I didn't return any calls. I knew why they were trying to contact me. Today I was supposed to show up in their living room with a store-bought pie, a check inside a Thanksgiving card, and a thankful smile. I was supposed to sit quietly in the kitchen folding chair, eat what they gave me, and pretend I didn't hear how busy they had been, how stressful their year had been, how expensive everything was, or maybe just leave the pie and the bill and leave as I always did. But this year I didn't go, I didn't send the money, and I was no longer alone, because for once I hadn't included myself in someone else's holiday script. That night I sat with Maureen on her back porch drinking chamomile tea. She turned to me and asked, "So what are your Thanksgivings usually like?" I thought about it for a second and then said, "Before it was me roasting a turkey, watching my phone fill up with requests, sometimes a call, usually a favor." She nodded calmly and firmly. And this year, I smiled, a small but sure smile. This year I decided to reclaim Thanksgiving. She didn't say anything. She just reached over and put a warm blanket over my knees. The sky slowly darkened. In the distance, a church bell began to chimichunem. The sea breeze whispered through the pines. A dull, constant silence. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. I didn't expect a holiday spent alone to make me feel so light, so calm, so complete. There were no family portraits, no crowded tables, no carefully rehearsed toasts. But in that moment, I knew I was in the presence of something much rarer. A real holiday, one that was not planned for me or dictated by anyone's needs. It was mine. It was an invitation I finally extended to myself. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I was still in the small coastal town. I had originally only booked 3 nights, but Maureen stopped me that morning before I could pack. She said she had to leave town unexpectedly for a few days, and that if I wasn't in a hurry, I could stay. "Pay what you want or don't pay anything," she told me with a wink. I hesitated for a moment, but then I said yes. Maybe it was the silence of the cabin, or maybe it was that strange feeling I hadn't experienced in years, that of being wanted, without strings attached. Every morning I would sit on the porch and let the sun warm my skin. At noon I would walk to the town's bookstore. Sometimes I would chat with the owner, sometimes not. I watered Maureen's plants, rinsed her teacups. I even tried to make one of her carrot cake recipes, although mine came out caved in like a dented hat. That afternoon I took a photo, just me on the porch, a slightly sloppy slice of carrot cake on the table, a cup of tea next to it, the quiet beach just behind. At first I just wanted to keep it for myself, but without much thought, I opened my old social media account, the one I hadn't touched in almost 2 years, and posted the photo. I wrote a simple line. This year I cooked only for me. I served only for me. No one asked me to pay. No one asked me to smile, and it was all beautiful. Then I closed the app, put the phone in my pocket, and continued with my evening. After dinner, I went back to the phone and almost dropped it. My notifications were flooded. Likes, shares, comments, dozens, then hundreds of names I didn't recognize. Faces I had never seen. One person wrote, "Isn't Thanksgiving the one day we should thank our mothers?" Another woman said, "You just described every holiday I've lived for the last 20 years. Someone else wrote, "Happy Thanksgiving. Your story gave me the courage to finally say no to my ungrateful children." I didn't know how to respond. I just liked every comment, one by one. My eyes were stinging, not from the screen, but from something much deeper, a place inside me that had been silent for too long. The next morning, my phone rang. Emily, I didn't answer. Seconds later, a message appeared. "What was that post supposed to mean? Are you trying to make me look bad? Jim's colleagues are asking why we didn't invite you to dinner. How could you do this?" I stared at the message for a long time. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask where I was, just accusations. Shame. Shame thrown through the judgment of others. I didn't answer because sometimes silence speaks louder than defense. That night, Maureen returned from her trip with 2 bottles of sparkling wine and a small bouquet of wild daisies. She had just won an award at a local art exhibition and invited me to celebrate. We laughed with cake and wine in her kitchen, almost doubled over from the bubbles and sugar. She put on an old scratch 60s record, and before I could protest, she grabbed my hands and forced me to dance her awkwardly. There we were, 2 old women twirling on the kitchen tiles, laughing like schoolgirls. Midway through the meal, she clung to the counter, breathless with laughter. "I'm too old for this. You're too good." I collapsed into a chair with my chest heaving and my heart racing. and for the first time in years I felt something weightless blossoming inside me. Later that night, I stood alone in the yard looking at the stars. My phone vibrated again. It was a message from Lim. Grandma, I saw you on the internet. The place you're staying looks great. I like the photo of your cake. I just want you to be happy. And just like that, my eyes filled with tears again. I didn't reply to the message, but I saved the photo, the one of the cake, the beach, and the quiet sun, and I put it as my lock screen. A reminder that peace is possible, that I deserve it, and that this is finally what it feels like to come home. Another week had passed. I was sitting in the backyard with the sun on my face and a scruffy stray cat curled up at my feet, waiting as always for breakfast. That's when I heard the creak of the door. At first, I thought it was Maureen coming back early. I got up ready to help her with her bags, but when I reached the front door, I stopped dead in my tracks. Emily was standing on the porch. She was wearing a long trench coat and a small travel bag. Her face was flushed from the trip, and something much more familiar, anger mixed with the panic that arises from being challenged for the first time. "How did you find this place?" I asked, with my hand still on the doorknob and my voice firm. "Lee recognized the coast in one of your photos," she replied expressionlessly. "I spent the whole night searching the internet until I found out where it was." I didn't say anything. She came in uninvited. Her eyes scanned the cabin, the can of cookies in the kitchen, the half-empty bottle of wine on the table. "So, this is what you've been doing," she said sharply. "Hiding here, posting cryptic things online, and making everyone think we're the villains while you relax like a queen." I didn't argue. I simply turned around and walked to the kitchen. "Emily, I didn't post a single lie, not about you or about anyone, but you knew exactly how people would interpret it." Her voice rose, breaking the calm. "Jim's colleagues are sharing it, calling it the Thanksgiving exploitation comeback. Do you have any idea how that makes us look?" I turned to look at her, and for the first time I didn't look away. "Did you come all this way for their appearance?" I asked in a low voice, but firmly. She hesitated only for an instant before changing the subject. "And so what's your plan? Aren't you coming back? What about the house? Why did you remove me from the bank account?" I took my glass of water, sat down, and spoke slowly. "My plan is simple. I'm reorganizing my life, and that includes my finances." Her face tensed. "Wait, are you saying you're really going to sell the house?" I nodded. "It's all ready for sale. The first round of viewings is scheduled for next week. Linda is handling everything." Her expression went from confusion to disbelief, then to panic. "And what? Are you abandoning us? Are you trying to erase us from your life? You have no idea how difficult things are for us right now." "No," I said, still calm. "I do. You've told me many times that Jim's job isn't stable, that Liam's school is too expensive, that the Thanksgiving budget was tight, and each time I covered the deficit, I paid, I covered, I donated without you ever asking what I had left to give." She started pacing back and forth across the room. Her words came out faster, more desperate. "You say it as if I was stealing from you. I'm your daughter. I was just—" "You are my daughter," I interrupted her gently, "but you've used it as an excuse to take, not to see me. You've never seen me as a complete person as your mother, and therefore as an automatic yes." Her face flushed even more. I saw a flash in her eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe guilt, but she didn't say anything. "I had planned to leave you that house," I continued. "I really did, but you never asked me if I wanted to give it to you. You simply took for granted that it would be yours, because I'm your mother, and that's what mothers do, Sintis." She bit her lip, wanting to respond, but the words didn't come out. "This time," I said, getting up, "I'm not going to give up my options." She watched me as I reached for the kitchen drawer and took out a folded letter. I didn't give it to her. I simply said, "After the sale, most of the profits will go to a local women's shelter. I'm creating a small foundation that bears my name to support women who are rebuilding their lives. And the rest," I added, "I'm keeping for myself, for my retirement, for traveling, for the holidays where I don't have to ask for permission to be included." Her expression broke. The color drained from her face. "You're really not giving me anything?" I looked at her, that person I once cradled in my arms, and for whom I sacrificed years. I didn't want to be cruel, but I also couldn't keep pretending. "Emily," I said softly, "I gave you 30 years of sacrifice, 10 years of obedience, and more blank checks than I can count. What I'm giving you now is for me." She lowered her head. Her shoulders slumped as if it had finally fallen. Then my phone vibrated, a voicemail. It was from Liam. I pressed play. Grandma, Mom said you're not coming back, but I still want to see you. You don't have to come to dinner, but please don't stop talking to me, okay? I held the glass tighter in my hand, swallowing hard. Emily looked down. Her voice had gone quiet. I didn't tell her to send that. I know, I said, but he's the only one who didn't take anything from me and still remembered to tell me he misses me. The room was silent. She didn't say goodbye. She took her bag and walked out the door. I didn't follow her. I leaned back in my chair. The air in the room still vibrated with the words we had finally said. Outside, the wind crept through the doorframe and soft and constant, like a whisper of, "You said it. You finally said it." And saying it is freedom. The day Emily left, I didn't walk her to the door. Maureen came home late. That night she looked at me and didn't ask me any questions. Instead, she smiled and said, "You look clearer." I let out a soft laugh. Today I said something that's been stuck in my throat for 30 years. I thought it would be the end, that maybe everything would finally calm down. But the next morning my phone rang. It was Jim's mother. We had barely spoken in the last decade. Maybe we only exchanged a few messages when Emily gave birth to Liam. That was all our interaction, but today her voice was clear, firm, softer than I remembered. "Grace," she began, "I just wanted you to know, we had nothing to do with what Emily has been doing lately." I stayed silent, holding the phone close, waiting. "She came to see us yesterday," she continued. "She said you were going to sell the house, that you were going to exclude her from the family. You know how she gets. She makes everything seem catastrophic. She wanted us to intervene and convince you." I took a deep breath. "And what do you think?" There was a brief silence on the phone, then she replied in a low voice, "I think you're doing the right thing. I didn't expect that. I didn't know what to say." She continued in a cautious, almost confessional voice. "When you're older, it's easier to distinguish between obligation and exploitation. When I was Emily's age, I thought the same as her, that parents should always give no matter what, that it was just what one was meant to do. But now I see it differently." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat by the window for a long time, watching the wind shake the trees in the yard. This family network is more complex than anyone admits. It's like a time-worn rug with its design buried under years of silent concessions, and as soon as you press the wrong spot, it falls apart. But once you see it clearly, once you realize that the pattern was broken a long time ago, you stop pretending that it is still whole. That afternoon, Linda called. The listing photos had already been published. She seemed excited. "We're getting more momentum than expected, and 2 serious buyers are already bidding. The closing might come sooner than planned." I didn't feel excited. What I felt was rooted, not relief, not pride, just the quiet certainty of having finally emerged from a long silence. That night, Leon sent me another voicemail. His voice was soft, uncertain, almost a whisper. "Grandma, Mom has been very upset lately. She keeps saying you've changed, that you're not helping us like you used to, but at school, we learned this word, boundaries. The teacher said that everyone should have them. If not, people won't respect you." I sat there for a long time after listening. Then I wrote a single response. "That's right, honey. Grandma is learning to set boundaries." "Thank you for understanding," he replied quickly. "I miss you." I replied, "I miss you too, and this time I want you to know me completely, not just the part that gives in." The next afternoon, Maureen came to find me in the kitchen, holding an envelope in her hand. "They left this at my door," she said cautiously. "No return address." I took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a single printed card, one line of text. "Don't you think it's cruel? A mother must sacrifice, serve her family until the end. You will regret it." I stared at the words for a while, then I folded the card in half, walked to the trash can, and threw it inside. Maureen didn't ask who sent it, and I didn't say, but we both knew. Someone out there was still trying to rebuild a picture that had already been broken, trying to glue the pieces back together, pretending that nothing was broken. But I was collecting the fragments, and this time I wasn't stepping on them anymore. I returned to Pittsburgh a week before Christmas. The house was already sold. Linda, as always, managed everything with discreet efficiency. The buyers were a young, newly married couple, radiant with joy at starting their life together. The day the papers were signed, I went back for one last look. The kitchen was empty. The clock on the wall had stopped chiming. The whole house remained silent, as if saying a silent goodbye. I stood in the doorway for a long moment. No tears came out, not because I didn't feel anything, but because I finally knew what it meant to let go. I didn't go back to the old neighborhood. Instead, I chose a community of independent housing for women in the west of the city. The place was warm and bright, with individual apartments for each resident, each with its own small balcony, kitchen, and space to breathe. There were shared craft rooms, a reading room, and a garden where neighbors grew rosemary and told stories. The neighbor next door was an accountant. She collects stamps and brews her own mint tea. Across the hall is a recently retired nurse who loves to cook and insists that I taste her food at least once a week. I took a portion of the money from the house and formally launched Grace's Porch, a nonprofit initiative to support older women who are moving out of financial control and starting their own lives. At first, it was something small, just helping women write their resumes, understand pension plans, and connect with legal aid. Then, someone suggested we record a podcast. Someone else wanted to organize in-person meetings. Another proposed emotional recovery workshops. So we did it all, and more women kept showing up. They shared their stories, their fears, their victories. And by sharing, healing occurred. One by one, they began to understand. They were never alone, and it was never too late. That Christmas Lim sent a handmade card. On the front, he drew an old woman sitting on a porch with a cat, a cup of tea, and an open book resting on her lap. Inside, he wrote, "Grandma, my birthday wish this year is for you to stay healthy and happy." I taped that card to my refrigerator, and every time I see it, I feel like someone is whispering in my ear, I still love you deeply. Emily now messages me from time to time. A gentle, "How are you?" or "Lim wants to know if you liked his drawing." I don't always reply, but I no longer feel guilty. They no longer reproach me. She is learning little by little to talk to me as a person, not just as a mother. She no longer starts every request with, "Because I'm your daughter." I know she's still working on the boundaries I finally set. It's not fast, but it's something. At least now she calls, and I'm no longer in a hurry to open the door. Nowadays, I'm never worried if there's a seat for me at someone else's table. I have my own. Some holidays I spend with my friends. Other days I eat alone, and both are enough because I built something I never thought I'd have again. A home. It's not a house, it's me. Did you enjoy my story? From which city are you listening? Let's meet in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, which helps me continue bringing you more stories. Thank you sincerely for your kind support. On the screen, you'll find 2 more live stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more waiting for you on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story.